Good evening. Welcome to our council meeting for July 15th. Mayor and Councilor Norton and Councilor Quinnell are not here this evening. They've been excused, out of town, and otherwise unavailable. And so what you have is the starter crew. We'll begin this evening with a Pledge of Allegiance. And Riz, will you lead us in the pledge? Thank you. Next, we have communications from the public. If there's anybody here that wishes to speak to council or speak to staff about any matter that is not on our agenda this evening for a public hearing, you're welcome to take the microphone now. Michelle, anybody online? All right, moving on, we have communications from volunteer boards. Chris?
Hi, I'm Riz Getz. I'm a acting director of Whitefish Housing Authority, and I just have a few updates for you. First, to do with Depot Park Townhomes. We're almost done with all of the civil work for the site, just a few odds and ends ready to finish up for that, which means we're working hard on the final plat application along with our subdivision improvement agreements. So we'll be coming for you soon, hopefully no later than the end of August, but we'll be working with city staff to schedule getting in front of city council. And we will apply for building permits as quickly as we can after we get that in. We don't have an exact timeline because we're still configuring the specific goals, but we would love to get foundations in before it gets too cold. That's kind of the thing that we're thinking about right now with Depot Park Townhome. So yeah, we're excited moving forward with that. And then just in terms of general updates for Whitefish Housing Authority, every 5 years, public housing authorities are required to create and submit a 5-year plan to HUD. And there is, the way that process happens is we kind of behind the scenes at board meetings, we come up with a initial draft of our 5-year plan. Then there's a public noticing period. We'll have a couple of public meetings about that 5-year plan for who we are, who we think we want to become in the next 5 years. The public will have that 45 days to comment on it. And then we'll vote on it and adopt that particular 5-year plan. It's important because we can't really get federal funding for anything that isn't in our 5-year plan. And there are just some restrictions around the funding that we're able to get and how that works. And so we will be on the agenda for the Housing Committee for this month to chat a little bit about it, to talk about the committee specifically on housing. But once we have that initial draft out and public notice, I'll make sure that city staff gets it so they can forward on to you. And we would love any feedback or commentary from city council if you would like to provide it. But yeah, thanks for your support. We're excited to come before you and have more official information about Depot Park Townhomes, but that should be coming soon. Thank you.
Riz, I know I promised you no questions, but
yeah.
Would it be helpful for you guys to have a work session with council as you work through this 5-year plan? Would that be a helpful thing for you guys? Or do you want to do it yourself and then give it to us and wait for us to comment?
That's a good question. We're going to have a board meeting next week, and we can discuss that and then get back to you as soon as possible. Does that sound okay?
Yeah, that sounds fine. I just,
yeah.
I'm offering that, not requiring it.
Totally. I mean, that would be great to have feedback, okay. I would imagine, but I'll just make sure, and then we'll reach out to yeah. city staff to schedule that.
That'd be great.
Thanks so much.
Thanks. Okay.
Yeah.
Any other volunteer board reports? Any online, Michelle? No? Okay. Moving on, we have the consent agenda. It's our next item. I would entertain a motion.
I would move to approve the consent agenda as presented.
And I'll second.
Any further discussion? Giuseppe, can you hear us, by the way? Good.
I can, absolutely. Thank you.
Okay. All those in favor? All those opposed, like sign. Passes unanimously. Now on to our first of two public hearings. Our first public hearing is going to be Resolution 2426, a resolution disapproving a petition to discontinue, abandon, and vacate an unconstructed city alley between West 8th Street and West 9th Street. Craig, I think this is you.
Yes. Good evening, Deputy Mayor and Council, or at least some of you. So yes, this is a resolution to disapprove the request. The city recently was petitioned by the owners of 411 West 8th Street and 334 West 9th Street to vacate the city-owned alley between their properties. We received that request last month on June 8th. So Montana Code states that City Council may discontinue public rights-of-way if it can be done without the detriment to the public interest. Staff has reviewed this request and does not support the abandonment of the alley, considering factors such as future property development, traffic access, and fire safety. The presence of larger lots for potential infill development highlights the importance of maintaining the north-south connection provided by this alley. We also believe the request stems from encroachments into the unimproved alley, which have been ordered to be removed due to zoning violation complaints. While there are no immediate financial impacts due to this request, the need for future right-of-way in the area could result in significant financial impacts. Staff has reviewed the petition and does not support the request to abandon the alley, and we respectfully recommend that you hold the public hearing required to pass this resolution disapproving the owner's request.
Great. Any question for Craig on his report? Ben?
Craig, could you tell us a little bit more about what's happening with the alley right now?
Yeah, so right now, it's just an unimproved right-of-way, that's owned by the city. It looks like the owners of the adjacent properties are using it for some storage. In your packet, there is an aerial photo. I'll tell you what page here in a second.
It's like page 37.
There you go. Yeah, so page 37 of the packet, if you
There
you
appear
look
to be
in
structures in the alley.
area, I believe there may be a shed, a camper, and perhaps another smaller structure. I believe the garage at 334 West 9th is right on the boundary. It doesn't meet the setback, but I think that would be at least grandfathered in. Legal non-conforming use.
And is
I'm
there
not
any-
familiar with the zoning complaints, but I believe they stemmed from one of the adjacent property owners sometime in the last 2 months or so.
It's been 6 months.
Oh, it's been 6 months, excuse me.
And has there been any justification offered why the city should do this?
It was a very short petition that was received. I think it was only one paragraph. That's also included in the packet on page 40. And it doesn't appear there's any justification. They just respectfully asked the city of Whitefish to abandon the alley between the properties.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions for staff at this time? All right, seeing, Giuseppe, you have any?
No.
Okay, good. That being said, we've noticed a public hearing for this matter. Anybody wishes to speak on the alley abandonment? We'd entertain that now.
My name's Neil Bartleson. I'm the fourth generation on that piece of property at 411 West 8th Street. And so my great-grandparents got it 88 years ago. My folks acquired it in 1985, and we've always kind of known that there was an alley easement there. but it's, you know, it's only been maintained and manicured by the homeowners, the 3 homeowners that adjacent to that area. It's just between 2 dead-end streets, you know. It's on the map, you can see it, but if you drive by, you would never know that it's an alley easement. There's some big 120-foot trees in it, and, I mean, it's been there for forever. So it was brought to my attention in conversation with the city to propose the abandonment of it, and so I did. So that's what we're here. I mean, there's, you know, for 88 years, I mean, it's super clean and manicured and taken care of. There's actually a fence down the middle of it. And I don't know where it's a nice green chain link fence. Been there a long time, somewhere around 20 years when we got annexed into the city in about that same time frame. But it's just, you know, it's always kind of been a wonder, you know, can't do this, can't do that with it because it is, you know, it's an alley easement. But so when it was brought to my attention to, you know, propose abandonment, I thought it was a great idea. And I mean, like I say, if you drive by, you'd never know it was an alley easement. You know, it's 2 quiet streets. And so that's why it was brought to my attention, and so I proposed it. The things, they've been there. They knew my great-grandparents, you know. The Carrie that lives there 70 years, you know, still mows it, takes care of it. I mean, it looks nice. It's a park-like setting, you know, so that's why it was, you know, just to kind of, I don't know, that after you haven't used it in 88 years, you know, maybe it's time to
Right.
look it over. But
Okay.
thank you for your time.
Thank you. Craig, do we have any, is this proposed to connect to any part of I'm just curious, is it, the current alley, is it proposed to be in future use, to connect to other alleys? What is the?
No, we don't currently show any use for that alley in any transportation plan. We just think it's short-sighted to eliminate the possibility, should a developer come in. I mean, these are larger lots and likely will be subdivided at some point in the future. And we think it would be prudent to maintain the ownership, you know, should the use of that right-of-way become important for a future development plan.
Okay, and I'm just curious, to the extent we have encroachments going on in that particular easement, are we concerned about needing to do anything about them in the near term?
Can you speak to that? I'm not entirely sure, perhaps Angie, exactly what the complaints were.
I mean, anything that someone builds within it, and it's not an easement, it's actually a city right-of-way, it's an alley.
Okay,
So anything built in there, anytime the city could come in and decide to develop that, and
Right.
anybody that puts something in there does that at their own risk, knowing that the city could remove that at any time when they develop that alley. But there are, you know, there's some setback violations on those properties, I think on either side. I'm not familiar with the whole case. It's something that our code enforcement guy's been working on, but I'm not exactly sure what's actually within the alley right-of-way. But there's some other, I think, would resolve some setback issues from other structures on there if they, because when you abandon an alley, then each property owner on either side would get half of that, right? And so their lots would get bigger, which would increase their setback. But I
right.
mean, it is public property right now.
No, I understood that, and I'm just thinking of current use, future use. I mean, one of the things that occurred to me is that, yes, they've got encroachments in there. Yes, they need to be notified that they're encroachments, and that they could be removed at, pick it, 1 month's notice if we decided we wanted to develop that. But between now and then, do we care? If they
I
don't
think
care,
typically, you know, there's all kinds of, you know, unimproved rights of ways in the city, and some people put stuff in there or landscape it and things like that. And, you know, up until the time we're gonna develop it, then, yeah, we don't really care for
we
right now.
don't really care.
Yeah.
That's what I thought. I mean,
And I guess
as long
that's
as,
up to Public Works.
right.
They typically also require encroachment permits for public property for certain things, so.
No, it seems like they would as well, but I'm just thinking in terms of the practical solution here. We're not changing anything on this property or what's going on there for essentially the foreseeable future. If somebody wants to put a garden in there, knows that it's part of the city, that's fine. We're not ceding it to them. They're not paying taxes on it. We don't have an issue of a perpetual easement or otherwise, or anything else. I'm just thinking, what's our real worry here? Am I missing something, Angie?
I don't think you're missing anything, Frank, but I think, Craig's correct that we generally don't just give away.
No, I'm not
abandoned
saying we should give it away.
Yeah, and
No. All I'm suggesting is they can't occupy that land and say that we don't care or that we're not noticing it and say adverse possession.
no,
So we're not worried about that at this point. So if anybody does anything in that easement,
no, we're not worried about, I'm not worried about adverse possession, but the neighbors have kind of been complaining about each other's encroachments, and like Dave said, our code enforcement officer has been
Okay,
dealing
well,
with those
that's-
complaints.
if the neighbors care about it, then we care about it. And that's all that's what I was just trying to get to. Okay. All right. Any further public hearing? Any online, Michelle? Not seeing any or hearing any. I would entertain a motion. Ben?
Just to make sure I'm clear, because this resolution is presented as a disapproval, so I would motion to approve should we wish to deny the request. Is that correct?
Yeah, Ben, when we do abandonments, we record them with the county clerk and recorder for GIS purposes. We didn't really know what you guys were going to do, so we wrote it as a staff recommendation. If you wanted to approve it, I would have to change that resolution for one of approval. So yes, Ben.
That's fine. I just want to make sure I did it correctly, so.
Yeah, my staff report was inaccurate. I wrote the staff report before I read the resolution. So my recommendation was to disapprove the resolution, but you really, if you want to disapprove the request, then you're approving the resolution.
Okay.
Sorry about that.
Approving the resolution to disapprove.
Correct. Okay, I got it. I'm going to move to approve Resolution 24-26.
I'll second it.
Seconded by Councilor Caltabiano. Any further discussion?
I'll make a brief comment.
Sure.
I think giving away public land to private landowners is fraught with peril. It's something that requires a very high level of scrutiny here, and as a general statement, I think is not something that would ordinarily be done absent extenuating circumstances. And so I understand the issues, but I just think as a general matter, I just think that's not something that we really would do unless there's a really strong justification to do that. So I hope all the issues can be worked out. And anyway, that's my motion. Thank you.
And I concur fully with what Ben said.
Thank you. Anything else from Andy? All those in favor? All those opposed, like sign. The matter of disapproval is approved unanimously. On we go. Next item is ordinance 2409, an ordinance pursuant to Title 6, Chapter 2, Section 5, prohibited and restricted parking of the City of Whitefish Code to establish additional parking restrictions on a first reading. Is this you, Craig, again?
Yes, this is me again. Good evening.
There you go.
So the Public Works Department does receive pretty frequent requests from residents and property owners and business owners to evaluate various traffic and parking restrictions. These requests are evaluated based on their merits, and requests that staff feel require an update to city ordinance are brought to City Council. So this is a proposed ordinance updating the locations of prohibited parking restrictions, and there are 4 of them. The first is on East 8th Street, where no parking is proposed on either side of the road between Spokane Avenue and Kalispell Avenue. This is a busy section of East 8th Street that provides ingress-egress for a variety of businesses as well as a populated neighborhood. Vehicles parked on this section of East 8th Street restrict traffic movements in and out of the alley, which is frequented by large delivery trucks. The parked vehicles also congest the intersection and often back up traffic on Spokane Avenue, creating a variety of issues. The next is Caro Avenue, where no parking is proposed on either side of the road between West 2nd and West 7th. Caro is a busy collector street, and we are currently working on this as our resort tax reconstruction project. That project was selected based on heavy vehicular traffic volume, unsuitable roadway conditions, and the need for a bike ped connection. So with Caro currently under construction, I felt this was a good time an appropriate time to update the parking restrictions. The third is Shiloh Avenue, where no parking is proposed on either side of the road between JP and Whitefish Avenue. The Public Works Department received requests from local neighborhood residents requesting these restrictions, primarily to prohibit Don K employees from parking on Shiloh. While the roadway is wide enough for parking on one side, the widths become quite constricted during the winter months with snow berms. Shiloh will also become a much busier north-south corridor with the completion of the first phase of Snowy Mountain. That project was approved by council last year, and construction is expected to begin in the next week or two. The final change is Woodside Lane, where no parking is proposed on either side of the road within 100 feet of Wisconsin Avenue. This one is similar to East 8th Street, where the west end of Woodside is popular for parking for the businesses along Wisconsin Avenue. When people are parked in this area, it restricts traffic on Wisconsin Avenue, which creates a variety of issues. So it's not anticipated that this ordinance will result in any additional cost to enforce, nor is it intended to create additional revenue from parking citations, but it is recommended that signs describing the new designations be ordered and installed, and they're estimated to cost about $500. So based on this, staff does respectfully recommend council hold a public hearing to adopt the attached ordinance updating various parking restrictions described in the report.
We good?
We're good.
Any questions for Craig on his staff report?
One is the Shiloh Avenue, is that intended to be quasi-temporary in nature during this construction and then be removed at a later date?
That's intended to be permanent.
Okay.
Yeah, once Shiloh Avenue connects to Whitefish Avenue, which we anticipate will be this fall, it's going to become a much busier road.
Okay. Thank you.
May I ask a question?
Sure.
Craig, do we have a bigger picture plan for the criteria for which certain, what you call higher traffic roads are not supposed to have parking on the sides, or are we deciding as we go?
Yeah, we typically decide as we go, based on the neighborhood need. So each roadway that we design, we take into consideration traffic volume, speed, amenities and parking. And so we do show collector roadways that are proposed in the transportation plan, and typically we don't permit parking on these collector roadways. But yeah, it's kind of each project as we go.
Thank you.
Great. We advertise for a public hearing, and we'll hold that public hearing now. Anyone who wishes to speak on this matter, please step to the microphone.
Hi, everybody. It's Rachel Schmidt, 675 Woodside Lane, and that's the last item that you guys just ran through. I'm in full support of limiting the parking on that street. Our last homeowners association meeting we had, there was no opposition to it. Everybody loves the idea because it is a problem, exactly how Craig has explained it. It does it does point to a bigger problem, and it sounds like, like the Don K Chevrolet, Shiloh Avenue. It's businesses that are created that didn't have enough parking spots to begin with. Like, I suspect that the office building that's on the corner of Woodside and Wisconsin, they came in and they were like, we have 5 office spaces, so we have, 5 parking spaces at the time they built years and years ago. I have no idea. But what happens is then they serve the public, and, that's when we'll have 15, 16 cars parked both sides of the street coming down that way. So this will totally alleviate the actual, safety issues for sure. But it does point to a bigger issue of those people are probably just gonna then park farther down our street. And then our mail service refuses to deliver to our mailboxes if there are cars parked in front of our homes. So even as residents, if we have one of my teenagers' cars is parked out front and the postal person can't reach my mailbox, they won't deliver the mail. They'll leave notes saying that they can't, and they're angry about it. So I do see that this is going to alleviate the safety issue, but it does point to the bigger picture of the businesses not having enough places to park, and then it's a bleed down into the residential area. But I fully support, for the safety reasons, to definitely eliminate the parking in that area. Thank you.
Thanks, Rachel.
Kevin Kaltschmidt. I am at 21 JP Road in Whitefish, also general manager at Don K. So I don't want to spend as much time as I did last time for your guys' stake, because we already talked about this quite a bit a month ago. But just reiterating a few of the things. There's already no parking on the east side of Shiloh, so when they're talking about someone parking in front of their house or something, sometimes I see the homeowners park on that side of the street, even though it's not allowed. But if there's only one side, there is enough room to drive by. But anyway, and I know they were upset because when they moved in 2020, we didn't have as many people parked there. But it had been that way for a dozen years before that. So once they moved in, after we had more inventory, then there were more people parked there again, because I had parked there thousands of times in front of their house because I worked there a long time. But it wasn't a problem then, but after they moved in, then they're complaining. But anyway, and there's enough. What I was asking mostly for, because if you're going to make that a more heavy traffic thoroughway, once it is actually open, once they get done with their development, the thing that we were trying to do was not get rid of that parking. Again, it's only on the west side of the street. Not get rid of that until the construction is completed, when the road is actually punched all the way through, because right now there's very little traffic on that road. And even if they have some trucks going to that site, but and they have another access as well from the west. I was just looking at that property. They had trucks they were using right now for that. As far as for this development project, that they deliver semi trucks to Wrights. There's definitely enough room to drive a truck through there, and there's no traffic going to and from until, I agree, once the road is actually punched through, then there'll be a lot more traffic. Even if I don't disagree, you could still drive through then, but I'll at least wait till then, because next month you'll see we have a project. We're trying to increase inventory storage across the street from Don K on the west side of the highway. We've already put in our CUP and everything for that, so that's going to be a month from today. We'll be talking about that. But while this is all happening, we'd like to have a little bit more time, because there's not really anywhere to park at this point in time, because our inventory is cars. So unlike someone has groceries or something like that, it looks like the same thing as parking, but that's really our inventory. So so if that's what I was asking, to talk to the mayor and some other people already about this, like in our CUP and stuff like that. If we could get that allotment, that will give us enough time to get this done, and that will be before winter. I think that's one of the main concerns I heard the city bring up, as far as you know, when there gets snow piled and stuff like that, this would happen before that, because they're thinking this would be done sometime in the fall. So at least that amount of time would help us. I mean, I've been working on this for a very long time. You know, it takes a while to get these projects done and completed, in anticipation of something like this. So if we could just basically wait at least until that's completed, because I don't see any possible need for that in the meantime. That's what we would like. We've been in that location since 2001. We've been using that street for a very long time, on and off. It's nothing new to the city. Everyone's always been able to drive by, so it's just since someone new moved in, so.
Thanks, Kevin.
Thank you.
Any further public comment? Not seeing any. Craig, what is the timeline for punching through to Whitefish Avenue? You saying it's going to happen late this fall, is what they're anticipating?
Correct, yeah, we had a pre-construction meeting for that subdivision last week, and they expected to begin the heavy earthwork this week or next. They didn't present a full schedule, but I would anticipate they'll have the roadway and the utility work completed this fall.
Thanks. Could we, as the city, live until fall to restrict the parking on that, on Shiloh?
Yeah, on this particular street, I mean, I do have some concerns with the size of the vehicles that they'll be using,
Okay.
competing with typical vehicular traffic and parked cars. But, you know, as Kevin mentioned, it's not like it's going to be a steady stream of trucks, and there's not a whole lot of other vehicular traffic at this point. So I'm not sure how we would, well, so this is the first reading. Does the second reading automatically go on the next agenda? And then it would take effect 30 days from the second reading. So we'd have to somehow modify this section, or just take section 3 out, and I'd come back to you in 2 months.
I'll leave that up to the motion from council as to what they think. I think we could entertain it, if we wanted to entertain it, we could entertain it either way, either through amending this to say it shall not take effect until November 1st, or some other number that we were comfortable with, or bring it back to us in another month, and then we'll be right at that for a second reading. Which would you prefer, Angie, if we wanted to do that?
What I would do is, it's section is it section? 6 is the effective. Yeah, 6 is the effective date. Section 3 is the one that deals with Shiloh. I would just add in section 6 that section 3, the ordinance does not take effect until any particular date that you guys wanted. I think that's cleanest.
All right, any other questions for staff? I would entertain a motion on this matter.
All right, I'll do it. Well, first of all, I would move to approve ordinance 2409 with one modification. And that modification would be to modify section 6 to say that section 3 goes into effect on November 1st of this year.
I'll second it.
Any further discussion? All those in favor? All those opposed, like sign? That passes unanimously, and we're off. There you go, Kevin. Thanks. Okay, Craig, this is your show again.
I know. Thought you guys missed me. This one should be pretty straightforward. So the Public Works staff has completed the bidding for the 2024 roadway overlay project. This project includes milling, paving, concrete sidewalk and curb replacement, manhole adjustment, and updated pavement markings. I did include a project overview in your report. Bids were received and opened on June 28th here at City Hall. We received a total of 4 bids. They ranged from 5.4% below to 8.1% above the engineer's estimate of $1.26 million. No bid irregularities were found, and the low bidder was Nelcon with a total base bid of $1,193,506.25. The project will be funded primarily by the local government road maintenance bill, that's Senate Bill 536, where we received $813,000 last year. The remainder is included in this year's budget and is supported by street maintenance assessments. Nelcon is very reputable. They've completed numerous successful roadway projects in northwest Montana, and I recommend that council accept the bids and award the bid to Nelcon in the amount of $1,193,506.25.
Any questions for Craig on his staff report? Hearing none. Andy?
Mr. Deputy Mayor, I would go ahead and move that we award the 2024 roadway overlay project to Nelcon in the amount of $1,193,506 and an even 25 cents.
Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Okay, seconded by Councilor Davis. Any further discussion?
Just a comment we're seeing $800,000+ coming from the state, so this is a positive one this time.
I agreed. All those in favor? All opposed, like sign. Matter passes unanimously and brings us on to communications from our city manager. Dana.
Great. In the packet, you do have my manager's report. One thing I do want to update you on is our negotiations with our Whitefish Police Officers Association. We worked on that last week, and it went very well. We have one more item that we're interested in discussing with them. But similar to our fire department union members, our goal was to get their pay up to 100% of market over the 3-year period, and they worked with us to do that. A lot of stuff stayed status quo, so I think that's good for the city, also good for us on a retention and recruitment standpoint for officers as we compete with other jurisdictions in the valley. The Greater Valley Health Center has requested another letter in support of a new grant opportunity that they have. I did recently, probably remember a couple months ago, I did send a letter on behalf of the city to support them so they could expand their services. They again have a new opportunity for additional funding to expand their hours at all facilities, but also expand services at their Hungry Horse location. And this center provides services to patients from dental, integrated medical, behavioral health, and substance use treatment services, including school-based services. Interesting to note, in the draft letter they provided me, they had over 7,800 patients in 2023 and expect to see over 8,800 in 2024. So for the Flathead County, this is a vital resource, and if you are okay with a simple head nod, I will write a letter in support of their grant application. So, great. Thank you. One last item is the council retreat. Andy, I'm putting you on the hot seat. September 14th is a date that seems to work for most. I'm still waiting to hear from Rebecca as well, but I want to get it penciled into schedules if that's the date. Does September 14th work for you, Andy? Okay, I'll confirm with John, but for everybody, just pencil that date in for us, and I'll confirm with John and send an email to council to let you know for sure. But with that, that's all I have this evening.
Great, thanks so much. Anything else from staff this evening? Council, comments? Andy?
No real comments, just made it through our annual Yellowstone meets Zoolander weekend here in town, so that was fun was had by all, I think, hopefully, and Kevin, weekend seemed to go pretty well. Yeah.
Yeah, the weekend actually went very well. We had very few problems, especially downtown, so worked out well.
Good, good. Well, other than that, that's my only comment, so. Oh, actually, I have one other comment. It doesn't happen a lot, but do we have and can we look at any kind of ordinance that would prohibit large trailers parking at the very end of blocks? There's been a few over in my neighborhood, and this is how I notice it, like on Dakota particularly, there was a large cargo trailer parked right with its back end right up next to the sidewalk. And for anyone making a right turn onto Dakota, you were completely blind turning onto Dakota for literally more than a half a block probably, and it was a wide cargo trailer, which also meant then to clear that, you had to swing into the other lane. And given the busyness over there, and particularly people, a lot of boat traffic, you know, moving through there with trailers, and I don't know, just something to think about. I don't know if we can do anything, if we could have like prohibited and because a couple of them like sat for like days on end, and it does create a bit of a safety hazard. So anyway, that's one of my parking thoughts for the weekend, so.
Thank you. Giuseppe, anything this evening?
Yes, Mr. Deputy Mayor. I wanted to address the work session that we then have about the resort tax rebate. And in Dana's report to us, she mentioned any other options or ideas in point 7. And I was wondering if it wasn't the case to make 2 comments. Number 1, the status quo is that we rebate 25%, I would say a minimum of 25% to the property owner taxpayers. But whatever remains from the unused budget, we added to that rebate. So really, we have seldom rebated only 25%. We've rebated probably an average of 32 to 33%. Is that correct, Dana?
That is correct. The revenue we've based off of prior year collections. And I think if we were to adjust that number to approximate growth in resort tax, we could potentially retain that additional funding, but it is pretty clear in state law that you have to rebate funds that are not budgeted to be used as additional property tax relief. So we would need to work through that a little bit more.
I understand. It's just that the perception is that we keep saying that we rebate 25%, but then de facto, we have always rebated more than 30%. So my additional comment or idea is in point 2, the option number 2, we talk about an additional 10% potentially allocated to community housing. Now, we already have put to the voters and passed some allocation to workforce projects. But nowhere do I see a possible discussion on rebating checks to residents who are not property owners. So I was wondering if, since we're discussing about all these options, if council would be acceptant of evaluating an option that includes a rebate to residents, but who do not own property.
Giuseppe, I'm not sure I was following what you were asking. You're asking whether or not we can add a consideration to issue checks or rebate checks to non-resident property owners? Is that what you're suggesting?
No, the other way around. Since the options require an issuance of checks in some of these options, I was wondering if we were willing in our upcoming work session in September to evaluate an option where residents in Whitefish who do not own property, so renters, workers, could be eligible. And to me, the concept of residents has always been someone who's registered to vote, could be eligible to receive a rebate even if they do not own property, because they spend the 3% resort tax all year round.
Giuseppe, it's going to be a work session, and I think we could certainly entertain that as well as any other ideas that you might have for this. So I think Dana, is that fine with you to at least run an evaluation of it?
Yeah, Giuseppe, actually, number one was Counselor Quinnell's idea. So if you have an idea that you want to draft out for me, I really just copied what he gave me and put it in there, and we threw in some other ideas that we thought of. So if you could just send me some bullet points on what you'd like, I can add it to the staff report to discuss with council. Again, staff isn't recommending any one way or the other. We were just providing options to give some direction for discussion. And so, yeah, send me your thoughts there, Giuseppe, and I can add something to that staff report. That work session, I think, is going to be scheduled for September 3rd.
Yes, thank you, will do, appreciate that. No further comments, Mr. Deputy Mayor.
Great, thanks, Giuseppe. I only have one real question or comment. It relates to our overlay. One of the intersections that I travel, fortunately or unfortunately, all too frequently, is the intersection of 93 and the Mall and Nelson's and Napa. I noticed just the other day that there's again flooding in that intersection, and one of our guys was out there trying to deal with the sewer or the stormwater drain, whatever it was clogged. It seems like we would put that intersection, which is horrible to drive, much less functions horribly. I mean, I'm offering this for your consideration. We probably ought to put that one on the agenda to deal with sooner rather than later, because it's not getting any better, and it's worse, way worse.
Yeah, we're gonna take care of that one internally. We struggle considerably with those intersections of Highway 93, starting at 13th. So 13th, 15th, Commerce,
Right.
19th. The issue that we have is the state right-of-way basically goes right up to the Nelson's parking lot, so most of Nelson's and Napa parking lot is in the state right-of-way, and the drainage plan for those intersections is pretty horrible. So it's our intent to do all three of those, 13th, 15th, and Commerce this year, but we're gonna handle it in-house.
I like it.
Because the rest of those roads from Baker to about 50 feet from, from the highway
Yep.
are in fairly decent shape.
Yeah, no, that's great, Craig. That makes me feel better. It makes me have as much confidence in you as I really have. That's great. I have no other real comments this evening other than I do think the concert weekend went as well as it's gone in town in all the years we've been doing it. I guess it's 5 or 6 now. The only objection I found was apparently, I don't know whether it was related or not, but all the credit card reading machines apparently crashed on Friday or Saturday or on Sunday. And I just find that, I know it's related, but I thought that was kind of hilarious. In any case, that's all. Without anything further from staff, I think we'll call ourselves adjourned. Thanks.